Hello, this video is on factoring by grouping, which is our last strategy that we're going to learn in this unit. You want to factor by grouping when you are working with 4 terms and you're trying to factor them. And the easiest way to think about it is to think of it as factoring in pairs. There's a couple steps to keep in mind. Step 1 is to group the first 2 terms together and the last 2 terms together. Step 2 is to factor out a GCF from each separate binomial, and our last step is to factor out the common binomial. We're going to look at a couple examples to see how this works. So our first example says b cubed plus 3b squared minus 8b minus 24. So our first step here was to not to factor anything yet, but to group the first 2 terms together and the last 2 terms together. So I'm going to group the first 2 terms. I like to draw parentheses around them, and my last 2 terms together. That's our first step. Second step was to factor a GCF out of each binomial. So I'm going to start with the binomial in pink. I'm going to take out a GCF. GCF is the biggest thing I can take out of both of them. In this case, that would be a b squared. If I factor that out, I'd be left with b plus 3. Do the same thing for blue. They're both negative, so I'm going to take a minus 8 out is the biggest thing here. If I take a negative 8 out, remember that's like dividing each one by negative 8. That will leave me with b plus 3. Now if you look at this, you'll notice that when I factored out a GCF from each binomial, I was left with a b plus 3 in each parentheses. That is our common binomial. So when I rewrite my final answer, I only write the b plus 3 once. And then I'm going to take my other 2, so the b squared and the minus 8, and I'm going to group them together in their own parentheses. So that's a way to simplify what is happening in this step right here. So this would be my final answer after factoring by grouping. Okay, on to our next one. And just like with other factoring methods, I would check for a GCF, but in this case, since the leading coefficient is a 1, there's nothing I can factor out. So I group the first 2 together. You don't have to use different colors, obviously, but it is nice to kind of separate them. So GCF of the first one would be a y squared. So remember, when I take out that y squared, I'm dividing each term by y squared, so that leaves me with y minus 9. Do the same with blue. Biggest thing I can take out there is a 2. Divide them both by 2. That leaves me with y minus 9. Again, when you end up with a binomial that's the same, y minus 9, you know that you have grouped and factored them correctly. So then my final answer, I'm going to write the y minus 9 once, take the 2 numbers or monomials in front of each parenthesis and group them in a second one. And that is my final answer. Alright, looking at our third example, and might be a good idea to pause the video and then watch me go through it so you can try the steps on your own and see how they're going. So group the first 2, group the last 2. Again, there's no GCF to take out initially, so I'm going to do a GCF of just x cubed plus 4x squared. Biggest thing I can take out is an x squared, so I'm going to divide that out there. That leaves me with an x plus 4. Here, biggest thing I can take out is just a 6. So plus 6, that's going to leave me with x plus 4. Final answer will be written as x plus 4, just one time, and then x squared plus 6. Okay, we have 2 examples left. These ones are getting a little bit different. First thing I see is that the number in front is no longer a 1, so that's my clue that I should check if I can factor out a GCF. In this case, I can factor a 2 out of everything, so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to factor a 2 out. When I factor it out, remember it's going to go in front of the parentheses, because I'm taking it out of everything. That'll leave me with now 6p cubed minus 15p squared minus 16p plus 40. And now I'm going to proceed to my step 1 as normal. So now I'm going to group my first two together still. Little scrunch there. My second two. And proceed as normal. The only thing I have to remember now is I still have that 2 out front. So to remind myself, I'm going to put the rest in brackets. So that's going to leave me with, let's see, 6p cubed minus 15p squared. I can take out a 3. And I can take out a p squared. So 6 divided by 3 leaves me with 2. P cubed over p squared is p. Divided out here. Be left with a minus 5. Do the same with the second one. This one, I'm going to take out just a minus 8. I can't take out anything else. So I'm dividing everything by that minus 8. That leaves me with 2p minus 5. Close my bracket. So notice I still have my matching binomials. Again, don't forget this 2 is out front that we factored out right away. It still needs to come along for our final answer. So there's the 2 we took out originally. Then I have the 2p minus 5. And then I have to put these two in their own parentheses still. So 3p squared minus 8. Final answer. Alright, this is our last example. Again, it might be a good idea to pause the video right now, try this on your own, and then watch and check my solution. Again, I see I don't have a 1 out front, so I'm going to check for a GCF. I have 20 and I have 32, so biggest number I can take out is just a 4. So I'm going to take a 4 out. So really I'm dividing them all by 4, which leaves me with, let's see, 5w cubed plus 5w squared plus 8w plus 8. From here, same approach. Group these two, group these two. Move on to my next step. The 4 is still out front. The top one, this one, I can take out a 5w squared, left with w plus 1. Second one looks like I can take out an 8, and I'm left with w plus 1, closing my parentheses. Again, when I rewrite my final answer, I have to bring this 4 along. So final answer would be that 4 we took out. Then I have our common binomial of w plus 1, and then I have my second binomial of 5w squared plus 8. Final answer. Thanks for watching.